Hare Krishna, everyone. Please accept my humble obeisance. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and all glories to Shri Guru and Shri Garanga. Thank you all for joining us again this evening. We're going to resume our discussions on the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. We'll begin with the Kirtan. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanande Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Nityanande Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vasavyari Shatari Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Vasavyari Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasati Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Hari Bo Hari Bo Gaura Hari Bo Gita Gaura Hari Bo Hari Bo Hari Bo Gita Gaura Hari Bo Jai Jai Prabhupada Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada, Prabhupada, Jai Jai Prabhupada. Krishna Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Krishna Gaura Hari People. So once again, thank you all so much for joining us this evening. Let's start with our prayers. Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Pradamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvishesha Shunnivari Pastrati Veshatarine. So thank you all so much for the opportunity to serve as we try to present an overview of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. This is a wonderful work by Srila Prabhupada that's based on the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which is a biography of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I pray for all your blessings to trust us with this class so that we can all have better understanding of the teachings and pastimes of the Lord so that we can serve Him better. So today we're moving on to the 9th chapter of the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And since the 3rd chapter, it's been Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's teachings to Sanatana Goswami in particular. So each week we'll start with the invocation, which is verse 18 of the 1st chapter of the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda, Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya, Jaya Nityananda, Jaya Dvaita Chandra, Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. The translation is: Glory to Sri Chaitanya and Nityananda, glory to Advaita Chandra, and glory to all the devotees of Sri Gaura or Chaitanya. So the 9th chapter begins as follows. Since Lord Chaitanya is especially merciful to innocent, unsophisticated persons, his name is also Patita Pavan, the deliverer of the most fallen conditioned souls. Although a conditioned soul may be fallen to the lowest position, such a lowly state will not prevent him from advancing in the spiritual science, provided he is innocent. Sanatana Goswami was considered fallen in society because he was in the service of the Muslim government and had thus been excommunicated from Brahminical society. But because he was a sincere soul, Lord Chaitanya showed him special favor by granting him a wealth of spiritual information. So this point of Srila Prabhupada's is very significant because we often think that social statuses in society are barriers to everything, but that actually has no bearing in spiritual life. The only thing that is actually important in spiritual life is the level of one's sincerity. So Sanatana Goswami, of course, being a pure devotee, was taking the role of someone who was considered fallen in society, even though he was actually highly intelligent, both spiritually and materially, and actually the best of persons. Because he's taking the role of us. He is receiving this knowledge from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu so that we could receive this knowledge from the Lord, presented in a way that we can understand. So this is very significant because what Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is presenting here is actually the Vedic conclusions, which are these confidential truths and understandings of Krishna. That's the conclusion of Vedas. And the Vedas are actually meant to be understood by those who are in the mode of goodness at least, if not pure goodness. And everyone in Kali Yuga is actually in the mode of passion and ignorance, which Prabhupada explains this in Srimad Bhagavatam. So for us who are in the mode of passion and ignorance, it's very difficult for us to understand the Vedic conclusions meant for those in the mode of goodness. Thus the important devotional literatures like Srimad Bhagavatam have been specially prepared for such persons who have fallen into the lower modes. And Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is also presenting this confidential Vedic knowledge in a way that all of us can understand out of his great and inconceivable love for us. The Lord next explained to Sanatana Goswami how the different spiritual planets are situated in the spiritual sky. The spiritual planets are also known as Vaikuntha planets. The planets of the material creation have a limited length and breadth, but as far as the Vaikuntha planets are concerned, because they are spiritual, there is no limit to their dimensions. Lord Chaitanya informed Sanatana Goswami that the length and breadth of every Vaikuntha planet is thousands of billions of miles. In other words, no one can measure any Vaikuntha planet's actual extent. Each of these planets is unlimitedly expanded, and in each of them the residents are full in all six opulences: wealth, strength, knowledge, beauty, faith, and renunciation. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is present in every Vaikuntha planet. Indeed, in each Vaikuntha planet, an expansion of Krishna has his eternal abode. Krishna himself has his original eternal abode, called Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan. So here, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is explaining how vast is the spiritual sky. The Vaikuntha planets, each one of them is actually unlimited. So we can imagine how unlimited the size of the spiritual sky is. In our modern science, our planet may seem quite large, but we actually have dimensions given. And the universe, though, doesn't have any dimensions by our standards. But the Vedic calculations, Krishna later tells Brahma, is that our universe, our material universe, is 4,000 million miles long or wide. So that means that even though material science doesn't have a size for the universe, the Vedic scriptures give us a size. But as far as the spiritual planets go, not even the Vedic scriptures can say how large these planets are, or to speak of how large the entire spiritual sky that all these planets are situated in. This is to give us an idea of how amazing these planets are. Even more so than their size, they're filled in all these unlimited directions with every opulence possible. And above all of them is Krishna's own spiritual abode of Goloka. In this universe, even the largest planet lies in one corner of outer space. For example, although the sun is a million times larger than the Earth, it still lies in one corner of outer space. Similarly, each of the Vaikuntha planets, although unlimited in length and breadth, lies in a corner of the spiritual sky known as the Brahmajyoti. In the Brahma Samhita 540, the Brahmajyoti is described as Nishkalam Ananta Ashesha Bhutam, or undivided and unlimited and without a trace of the material modes of nature. All the Vaikuntha planets are like petals of a lotus flower, and the principal part of that lotus, the center of all the Vaikunthas, is called Krishna Loka or Goloka Vrindavan. So here Sri Prabhupada is describing the actual layout. We've discussed that there are so many innumerable Vaikuntha planets in our previous classes where all the Lord's wonderful expansions are residing. So although these planets are so large, they're actually situated in all the corners, like the petals of a lotus flower. And the center of this lotus is Krishna's planet. So as large as all these planets are, we can just imagine the size of Krishna's own planet, and the size of this entire Brahmajyoti that's encompassing all these planets. Thus the expansions of Krishna in various forms are described herein, as well as his various abodes on the spiritual planets in the spiritual sky are unlimited. Even demigods like Brahma and Shiva cannot see the Vaikuntha planets or even estimate their number or vast extent. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-21. No one can estimate the length and breadth of all the Vaikuntha planets. Elsewhere in the Bhagavatam 2:7-41, it is stated that not only are demigods like Brahma and Shiva unable to make such an estimate, but even Ananta, the incarnation of the Lord's opulence of strength, cannot ascertain any limit to the Lord's potency or to the area of the different Vaikuntha planets. So if we're having trouble actually trying to imagine how wonderful and unlimited the spiritual sky may be, we're actually in very good company, because the greatest of the demigods, we know that there's 33 million demigods. So there are different levels of understanding even amongst them. of Krishna. But the topmost of the demigods, like Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, who are most intelligent, most spiritually advanced, even they don't have an idea of the extent of the spiritual sky. And what to speak of them, Krishna's own wonderful incarnation of Lord Ananta, who has so many mouths, unable to describe this wonderful spiritual sky, along with not being able to describe Krishna's glories in full, even though he is speaking from the beginning of creation. So for us, very insignificant living entities, the important thing is just for us to take Lord Chaitanya's word for how wonderful and unlimited these spiritual planets are. And instead of trying to speculate about them, we should just appreciate their beauty and focus our understandings and our knowledge, trying to get into the detail, into that of devotional service, which will help us to actually attain that spiritual realm. Again, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-21, one of the prayers of Brahma, is very convincing in this connection. O my dear Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Super Soul, O Master of all mystic powers, no one can know or explain the extent of your Vaikuntha planets or how you expand your Yogamaya energy throughout the three worlds. And a few verses earlier, Srimad Bhagavatam 10:14-7, Brahma prays, scientists and learned men cannot even measure the atomic constitution of a single planet. Even if they could count the molecules of snow in the sky or the number of stars in space, they could not understand how you descend to this earth or in this universe with your innumerable transcendental potencies and qualities. In Srimad Bhagavatam 2:741, Lord Brahma informs Narada that none of the great sages born before Narada, including Brahma himself, can measure the extent of the Supreme Lord's potencies. Indeed, Brahma declared that even Ananta, with his thousands of tongues, fails when he tries to fully describe the Lord's energies. Similarly, in Srimad Bhagavatam 10:87-41, the personified Vedas pray, my Lord, you are unlimited, and therefore no one can measure the extent of your potencies. I think that even you do not know the range of your energies. An unlimited number of planets float in the sky just like atoms, and great Vedantists who engage in research to find you discover that everything is different from you. At last they conclude that you are everything. So, unlike the scientists, we can't go on speculating about the universe, how many atoms there are there, or how big it is, where it came from, what it's composed of, and all of that, because it takes so very long to even get a fraction of understanding of the Lord's creation. And in this age of Kali Yuga, we're so unfortunate to be full of so many vices and put into so many difficult circumstances, and also to have such short lives that speculating is a complete waste of time. In fact, even the scientists would be disappointed to find that nothing that they're doing is actually pioneering in any way, that the Vedantists, different kinds of Gyanis, all other kinds of yogis, especially the Sankhya yogis, they've all been trying to get to the bottom of who is behind the universe and what exactly is the universe, and other such related queries. And eventually, Krishna says, after many millions of births, they actually come to devotional service. So it's a complete waste of time that we actually do not have. And therefore, in this age, as where the Srimad Bhagavatam says, besides being short-lived, we're quarrelsome, lazy, misguided, disturbed. We need the spiritual knowledge to be presented to us in a way that we can understand in a timeless manner, where we can make the most of the opportunity that we have to perfect these lives and actually attain the spiritual world instead of wasting time trying to understand more about this material world. This is why we're so fortunate to have all this knowledge presented to us so mercifully by Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and then explained further by Srila Prabhupada, all the devotees that have followed in his footsteps. So we should be grateful for this. We should be trying to approach this knowledge with faith and being purified by the understanding that Krishna gives us from within. We will be able to attain this eternal and unlimited spiritual realm. When Lord Krishna was within this universe, Brahma played a trick on him in order to confirm that the special cowherd boy in Vrindavan was actually Krishna himself. By his mystic power, Brahma stole all the cows, calves, and cowherd friends of Krishna and hid them. But when Brahma returned to see what Krishna was doing alone, he saw that Krishna was still playing to the same cows, calves, and cowherd boys. By his Vaikuntha potency, Lord Krishna had expanded all the stolen cows, calves, and friends. Indeed, Brahma saw millions and billions of them, and he also saw millions and billions of herding sticks and fruits, lotus flowers, and horns. All the cowherd boys were wearing different clothes and ornaments, and no one could count their vast numbers. Then Brahma saw each of the cowherd boys become a four-handed Narayan, and he also saw innumerable Brahmas, different universes, offering obeisances to the Lord. He saw that all these personalities were emanating from the body of Krishna, and after a second entering into his body. Lord Brahma became struck with wonder by this extraordinary feat of Krishna's, and in a prayer he stated that although anyone and everyone could say that they knew all about Krishna, as far as he was concerned, he did not know anything about him. My dear Lord, he said, the potencies and opulences you have exhibited just now are beyond the ability of my mind to understand. So this is a very significant pastime because if Brahma, the chief engineer, we could say the chief scientist of this universe, was completely bewildered by Krishna, but how is it that anyone else, no matter how intelligent, would be able to understand the Lord without the requisite devotion? Brahma himself was sitting watching this transcendental child who was exhibiting all these wonderful pastimes on the planet and thinking, who is he? Or who does he think he is? And in his bewildered mind, deluded himself by the material energy, Brahma thought to trick Krishna, to teach this clever child a lesson. So he takes away all the cows and calves, cowherd boys, and turns away for a minute, which in Earth time, of course, is a year. And in that entire time, Krishna had been able to expand himself to each and every cowherd boy and cow. So he explained in a previous class, Srila Prabhupada gave us the understanding that when Krishna appears in these different forms, it's very different than when a material, for example, a yogi, is able to expand themselves. When the yogis expand themselves by mystic power, they can create like a certain number of forms, but these forms are merely replicas of themselves. So each replica doesn't have the ability to act by itself. If the original person, say, raises their left arm, then all the replicas will do so. The replicas can't act separately. But when Krishna, who is completely spiritual, expands himself, each one of the forms that he expands is able to act independently of the other, and so display individual characteristics, emotions, actions, speech, and so on, which is very extraordinary, and of course, one of Krishna's multipotencies. So Krishna exhibits this wonderful potency when he expands himself in Dwarka, when he expands himself during the Rasa dance, for example. And now when he has expanded himself into each cowherd boy and into each cow and calf. So Brahma is astounded by this feat because he's seen that all these cowherd boys, calves, and cows are behaving exactly the way the original cowherd boy, calves, and cow forms had been, such that even their parents were not able to tell for that entire year that the boys and the cows and calves were missing. And then Krishna really let Brahma have it when he turned all of those forms that he had now manifested into four-armed Narayan forms. And Brahma, on top of that, saw millions of Brahmas and other demigods coming to worship those forms. Thus, the Lord was establishing to Brahma that I am your worshipful Lord. Um, Even though appearing just as a child, I am being worshipped by all the demigods as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then further, the Lord showed that all the forms had come from Him and were going into Him. Because we know those who are foolish and ignorant always try to explain away Krishna's glories by thinking that perhaps the forms were manifested by someone else or something else. But Krishna showed Brahma that everything, all the expansions were all coming from Him, and all the expansions, of course, went back into Him. And so Brahma, now completely bewildered, surrendered to Krishna and offered very beautiful prayers of apology and glorification. These are recorded in the 14th chapter of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. Lord Chaitanya further explained that not only is the potency of Krishna Loka limitless, but also is that of Vrindavan, Krishna's abode on this planet. From one point of view, Vrindavan is about 32 square miles in area, yet in one part of this Vrindavan, all the Vaikunthas exist. The area of present-day Vrindavan contains 12 forests and covers about 84 koshas, or 168 miles in area, and Vrindavan city is estimated to be about 16 koshas, or 32 square miles. How all the Vaikuntahs can exist there is beyond material calculation. Thus, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu concluded that the potencies and opulences of Krishna are unlimited. Whatever he told, Sanatana Goswami was only partial, but by such a partial presentation, one can try to imagine the whole. So, therefore, even the Vrindavan in this world is absolutely not an ordinary place. Unfortunately, because we're looking at these holy places with defective eyes, we're not able to actually see them the way they are. And this is the reason why we have to see them through sound, that is, through hearing from those self-realized souls who can actually explain to us the exact nature of these holy places. When we hear from them, then we can understand how not only all the Vaikuntha planets, but actually every holy place in the universe is present in Vrindavan. So when we're constantly hearing from these pure souls, then our vision becomes purified as well, so that in time we're able to actually see all of these places as they are in Vrindavan with our own eyes. While Lord Chaitanya was speaking to Sanatana Goswami about the opulences of Krishna, he became deeply immersed in ecstasy. And in that transcendental state, he recited a verse, Srimad Bhagavatam 3:221, in which Uddhava, after the disappearance of Krishna, told Vidura, Krishna is the master of all demigods, including Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and the expansion of Vishnu within this universe. Therefore, no one is equal to or greater than him, and he is full in 6 opulences. All the demigods engaged in the administration of each universe offer their respectful obeisances unto him. Indeed, the helmets on their heads are beautiful because they are decorated with the imprints of the lotus feet of the Supreme Lord. It is similarly stated in the Brahma Samhita 5.1 that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead and that no one can be equal to or greater than him. That is Brahma's conclusion. Although the universal rulers, Brahma, Shiva, and Vishnu, are masters of each and every universe, they too are servants of the Supreme Lord, Krishna. So we've discussed before, when describing the guna avatars, that they're all, of course, carrying out their functions under Krishna's control, being the supreme controller, Brahma being Jiva, who being Jiva Shakti, and Shiva being Shiva Tattva, and Lord Vishnu being a general term for the 3 personalities, the Purusha avatars, who are actual creators, maintainers, destroyers of this universe, are all carrying out their functions under Krishna's control. So Krishna is the supreme lord of all, since they are considered controllers of this material universe. So we can ask that we've heard these points discussed so many times, and yet again, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Dasha Prabhupada are mentioning. And the reason is that in spiritual life, repetition is not the same as it is in material life. Material life, when something is repeated, we consider it redundant. But in spiritual life, this repetition is there so that our belief, our faith, our strength can be increased. It's so interesting to think that all this knowledge has been available, for example, for millions of years in the human race, but yet still we don't have many people taking to Krishna consciousness. So the message needs to be mentioned over and over. And for those who are actually trying on the path of Krishna consciousness, Maya is always trying to test one's resolve to follow the principles of devotional service. So for us to be able to withstand her tests, we have to hear these transcendental points being repeated and repeated. We have to gain faith in the Lord's glories, His power, and we have to hold on to that whenever Maya tests us. From the revealed scriptures, it is understood that Krishna lives in 3 transcendental places. His most confidential residence is Goloka Vrindavan. It is there that he stays with his father, mother, and friends, exhibits his transcendental relationships, and bestows his mercy upon his eternal entourage. There, Yogamaya acts as his maidservant with Rasa Leela dance. The residence of Rajabhumi. The Lord is glorified by particles of his transcendental mercy and affection, and due to his merciful existence, we, the residents of Vrindavan, have not the slightest anxiety. As stated in the Brahma Samhita 543, in the spiritual sky, all the Vaikuntha planets which make up Vishnu Loka are below the planet known as Krishna Loka, or Loka Vrindavan. On that supreme planet, the Lord enjoys his transcendental bliss in multiple forms, and all the opulences of the Vaikunthas are fully displayed on that one planet. Like Krishna, his associates are also full with 6 opulences. So thus far we've been describing how wonderful the Vaikuntha planets are. And now we're seeing that even more than those planets, Goloka Vrindavan is exhibiting all the opulences of Krishna in full. In Vaikuntha, his opulences are displayed to different degrees. But in Goloka Vrindavan, Krishna and his associates in that entire realm are displaying all of the opulences of Krishna in full. And on top of that, are expressing these opulences in the highest love, which is the greatest opulence of Sri Vrindavan. The relations that Krishna is experiencing with all his devotees there, that of Krishna being their friend, their child, their lover, that's not experienced anywhere within the life of the planets. That is the transcendental opulence of Goloka Vrindavan. Next, Lord Chaitanya is explaining how exhaustive it is, the spiritual world, in relation to the material world. And he's citing a very nice pastime in this regard. So it's Lord Brahma being bewildered again. Lord Brahma is understandably proud of his material universe manifested by the Lord's great power through him. And so he thinks that there is nothing more wonderful than this. And so he's wondering, what exactly is this 3/4 of the material, 3/4 of creation known as the spiritual realm? So he goes to Dwarka to see Krishna. And he encounters the doorkeeper, who asks him who he is. And Brahma, of course, grants his identity. And the doorkeeper goes to Krishna, and Krishna asks, which Brahma? So we know that Krishna knows everything, but for the sake of instruction in this pastime, he asks who exactly is there at the door. So the doorkeeper goes to Brahma and asks, which Brahma are you? To which Brahma is extremely amazed, because his understanding, of course, is that he's the only Brahma in his vast material universe, that is our present universe, is the only one. So he's confused. He describes himself, four-headed Brahma, father of the four Kumaras. And so eventually he's allowed to be admitted into Lord Krishna's presence. And before he even asks his question, he asks Krishna what he meant by asking which Brahma he is. And Krishna, first smiling to instruct his dear son, then summons all these innumerable Brahmas from all the universes. And of course, they're all fairly extraordinary because their universes are larger, so they needed to have more heads in order to manage the affairs of that universe. So some of them have 10 heads, 20 heads, hundreds of heads. And Brahma himself is so bewildered seeing all of these personalities in front of them. And it's very nicely described that when they bowed down to offer their respects to Krishna, all their helmets, they were shining so brightly, and they were striking each other as they were offering obeisances, making a great sound of prayer. So after this, Krishna just addressed them for why he had seen them, and then bade them farewell. And Brahma was now with Krishna, and then upon seeing this, it says, Lord Brahma fell to the lotus feet of Krishna and said, "What I thought about you before was all nonsense. People may say they know you perfectly, but as far as I am concerned, I cannot begin to conceive how great you are. You are beyond my understanding." Krishna then informed him, this particular universe, that is our universe, is only 4,000 million miles across, but there are millions and billions of universes which are far, far greater than this one. So we know from our previous discussions that all these universes are emanating from the pores of the body or the breathing of Mahavishnu. Some of these are many trillions of miles across, and all these universes require strong Brahmas with many more than 4 heads. Krishna further informed Brahma, this material creation is only 1/4 of my creative potency. 3/4 is in the spiritual kingdom. The four-headed Brahma then offered obeisance to Lord Krishna and departed, now understanding the meaning of the Lord's three quarters energy. So Brahma was completely humbled that this simple material universe, actually one of the smaller, it seems, compared to the others, was just one tiny part of the spirit of the material creation. And this material creation is a very small part of the entire creation. This three quarters energy or three quarters of the spiritual world is unlimited, expanding in all directions, as we explained, full of all these transcendental opulences. So we can understand then through understanding the vastness of the material world, how vastly, how unlimited the spiritual world actually is. And it's actually quite possible for us to imagine. The Lord is known as Triyadishwar, a name indicating his principal abodes, Goloka, Mathura, and Dwarka, so meaning the Lord of the three abodes. These three abodes are full of opulences, and Lord Krishna is the master of all of them, situated as he is in his transcendental potency. Lord Krishna, the master of all transcendental energies, is thus full with six opulences, and because he is the master of all opulences, all the Vedic literatures acclaim him as the supreme personality of Godhead. Lord Chaitanya then sang a nice song to Sanatana Goswami about the opulences of Krishna. All the pastimes of Krishna are exactly like the activities of human beings. Therefore, it is to be understood that his form is like that of a human being. Indeed, the human form is an imitation of his form. Krishna is dressed just like a cowherd boy. He has a flute in his hand. He seems to be just like a newly grown youth. He is always playful, and he plays just like an ordinary boy. So Srila Prabhupada has explained previously that we don't believe in the concepts of anthropomorphism or zoomorphism, where one takes the characteristics of human or animal, gives them to God. It doesn't work like that. It is not that God is in our form or shape, or we imagine it in a human form because we have a human form. This flawed thinking leads people to believe that when Krishna appears, for example, he's actually a human that becomes God, since they're ascribing human characteristics to God. And so they can worship people who can become God, human to God. But in our understanding, and also similarly, the Christian scriptures say man is made in the image of God. It is us, so Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is saying, who are imitations of Krishna's form. So Krishna has the original human-like form, and we are resembling his form. And this is also his mercy on us, because if we are resembling his form in this material world, we're more easily able to love him because we can identify with him when he appears, him having the same features as a human, the same two arms, the same beautiful face, the same two legs, so on. Of course, many times, unlimited times more powerful. But in that, we're able to relate to him. In the same way, the rest of the material world is also a reflection of the spiritual world, so that we can relate to the spiritual world. And this means that while we are in the material world, we can engage in devotional practices in this reflection of the spiritual world with all of Krishna's various manifestations, his deity form, for example, so that we can prepare ourselves, basically, this being sort of a trial run for us being in the spiritual world and engaging in devotional service as closely as we would be in the spiritual world, even to the point of where when we reach the height of devotional service and pure love, we're actually in the spiritual world while we're in the material world. Thus, Lord Chaitanya began telling Sanatana Goswami about the beautiful aspects of Krishna. The Lord said that anyone who understands these beautiful qualities is dipped into an ocean of nectar. Krishna's Yogamaya potency is transcendental, beyond the material energy, but the Lord exhibits his transcendental potency even within this material world, just to satisfy his confidential devotees. In other words, Krishna appears in the material world to satisfy his devotees. His qualities are so attractive that Krishna himself becomes eager to understand himself. When he is fully decorated and stands with his body curved in three ways, with his eyebrows always moving and his eyes so attractive, the gopis become enchanted. His special abode is at the top of the spiritual sky, and he resides there with his associates, the cowherd boys, the gopis, all the goddesses of fortune. It is there that he is known as Madan Mohan. So this name Madan Mohan is so significant because it means the attractor of the mind of Cupid. That Cupid is known as the most attractive feature in the material world. He attracts so many others, and he's also the feature that causes attraction between people, but even he's attracted by Krishna. Krishna's form is so incredibly beautiful that Krishna himself is attracted to his forms, to his form. That the gopis, the most beautiful girls in all of creation, are attracted to Krishna. That nobody who sees Krishna is able to take their mind, their eyes, and all their senses off of Krishna. And so he is existing eternally beautiful, attractive in every way, with his eternal wonderful associates in this extraordinary spiritual realm of Goloka. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu further explains that even though the Lord has expressed so many extraordinary expansions, his Leela avatars, his Guna avatars, the Purusha avatars, even the Super Soul and Personal Brahman are all engaged in extraordinary activities. Above all of them, the Lord and his pastimes within Dwarka, Mathura, and especially in Vrindavan, these are the most attractive. These holy places are therefore like places of preaching, because when the Lord appears in most attractive ways and to display these most attractive pastimes, it's actually to reclaim the spirit souls back to him. His pastimes are preaching. It's explaining to the conditioned souls that they can also experience such extraordinary bliss and joy and beauty and love eternally with him in the spiritual world. And so by their attraction, they can be engaged in devotional service, which is the way in which they can get free of this horrible temporary material world and attain these unlimited, wonderful spiritual planets, particularly Goloka Vrindavan. The manifestation of Krishna's internal potency, Yoga Maya, is not exhibited in the part of the kingdom of God comprising the Vaikuntha planets, but Krishna does exhibit that internal potency within the universe when he descends from his personal abode out of his inconceivable mercy. Krishna is so wonderful and attractive that he himself becomes attracted by his own beauty, and this is proof that he is full of all inconceivable potencies. As far as the ornaments decorating Krishna's body are concerned, it appears that they do not beautify him, but they themselves become beautiful simply by being on his body. Always standing in a three-curved way, he attracts all living entities, including the demigods. Indeed, he even attracts the Narayan form that resides in every Vaikuntha planet. So this understanding of how Krishna's internal potency is exhibited only in Goloka and not Vaikuntha, but actually in the material world also is a little technical, but we can explain it from the purport of Srimad Bhagavatam 3.2.12, where Srila Prabhupada writes, "The 6 excellent opulences which he displayed in the mortal world by the agency of his internal potency, Yoga Maya, are rare even in the Vaikuntha lokas. All his pastimes are manifested not by the material energy, but by his spiritual energy. The excellence of his Rasa Leela at Vrindavan and his household life with 16,000 wives is wonderful even for Narayan in Vaikuntha, and is certainly so for other living entities within this mortal world. His pastimes are wonderful even for other incarnations of the Lord, such as Sri Ram, Nrsimha, and Varaha. So Krishna only displays all his opulences in full in his Vrindavan planet, Goloka Vrindavan. So all of those opulences are displayed in all of his extraordinary pastimes, particularly in his rasa dance. And so these full opulences and all these pastimes, they're not manifested in Vaikuntha planets at all. These planets, though, are manifested here out of the Lord's conceivable mercy, again, to reclaim the conditioned soul. And so when he appears here, his Yoga Maya potency, which is operating in the spiritual world, particularly, of course, as we said, only in Goloka Vrindavan, that Yoga Maya manifests Goloka Vrindavan here in the material world, something that does not happen in Vaikuntha Loka. And so here Krishna actually expresses his full opulences, and so all those wonderful pastimes in which those opulences are displayed. So it is said that even the inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka are attracted by this, these extraordinary displays of opulences, Lord's wonderful pastimes, Lord Krishna's transcendental beautiful form, which they don't even get to see. And so we see that Lakshmi Devi was captivated by the Lord's form, Narayan himself was captivated by the Lord's form. All the inhabitants of Vaikuntha are captivated by the beauty of Krishna and his pastimes. So we can't even imagine how extraordinary Krishna is, but we can be engaged in his devotional service so that we can attain that love for him by which we can actually be in his association, okay, by the mercy of our spiritual masters. So thank you so very much for your kind attention. We're going to continue with chapter 10 next week. Shri Shantai Gaura Hari Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai, Shri Shantai Gaura. Are there any questions?
Hare Krishna, Maharaj, thank you for the class.
Krishna Prabhupada, thank you for the service.
Maharaj, we can request Bhakta Raja. Bhakta Raja, welcome. Is there any questions from you? Question or comments?
Hare Krishna. No, I don't have any questions or comments right now.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Bhaktan Kodura Paul Mataji, from your side. And Mataji, I think we're all good. Or maybe Risha, Ram Narayan, or Damodar Prabhu. Hare Krishna. If you can please unmute if you have any questions or comments. Mataji, I think we're all good. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So
Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, thank you. So we'll just have a short kirtan close. A very nice bhajan by Shri Narottam Das Thakur. Glorification of Lord Gauranga Mahaprabhu. Gauranga Bhakti Habe. Gauranga Bolite Habe. Kula Kasharira. Gauranga Bolite Habe. Kula Kasharira. Hari Hari Bolite Nani Bhave Mera. Hari Hari Bolite Nayane Bhave Mera. Araka Benita Chande Dorna Hoibe. Araka Benita Chande Dorna Hoibe. Samsara Basana Moy Kabe Kuchahate. Samsara Basana Moy Kabe Kuchahate. Vishaya Chariya Kabe Shude Have Mana. Vishaya Chariya Kabe Shude Have Mana. Kabe Hamera Bhakte Shri Vrindavana. Kabe Hamera Shri Vrindavana. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Hoibe Akuti. Gabe Hambujavote Yugala Piriti. Gabe Hambujavote Yugala Piriti. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahu Mora Asha. Rupa Raghunatha Pade Rahu Mora Asha. Vardhana Karo Sada Narottam Dasa. Vardhana Guru Sada Narasamadasan Goranga bolite habe Pulaka sharira Goranga bolite habe Pulaka sharira Hari Hari bolite nayani babinira Hari Hari bolite anbavinira Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai 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 Jaya Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Gauranitai Jaya Gauranitai Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada, Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Gurudev, Jai Jai Gurudev, 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 Jai Jai Gurudev. Shri Shankar Guru Hari Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. So we'll read the translation. When will that opportune moment come to us, when there will be shivering of the body as soon as we chant Lord Gauranga's name? While chanting Hare Krishna, when will there be tears in the eyes? When will I obtain the mercy of Lord Nityananda Chandra? When, by his mercy, will the desire for material enjoyment become very insignificant? When the mind is completely purified, being freed from material anxieties and desires, then I shall be able to understand Vrindavan and the conjugal love of Radha and Krishna, and then my spiritual life will be successful. When shall I be very much eager to study the books left by the 6 Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami? By their instruction, I shall be able to properly understand the loving affairs of Radha and Krishna. My only aspiration is to attain the lotus feet of the 6 Goswamis, headed by Srila Rupa Goswami and Srila Raghunath Das Goswami. Narottam Das constantly prays to attain their lotus feet. So thank you all again so very much for joining us this evening, and please do join us next week for the continuation of our discussions and the teaching of Lord Chaitanya. Shri Shankar Gaura Hare Ki Jai, Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.